The Eagles' first stringers just wrapped up their two most important days of the preseason. There was a lot riding on the joint practices with the Patriots. And based on what I saw from Jalen Hurts and company, there's still a lot to be desired.
When we come out here and practice, every day is an opportunity to learn from that. The good, the bad, everything is an opportunity to learn from. So that's what I really get excited about.
All eyes were on A.J. Brown. And here's the catch. The big takeaway wasn't what he did against his old team, but what his departure means for Nick Sirianni's beat-up wide receivers group.
There's so many different looks that defense can throw at an offense and vice versa, offense can throw at a defense. So you're trying to prepare them for every scenario.
Also, Vic Fangio's top defense got its first major test. Did it live up to the hype?
It's great to go against a new team, new schemes, new players.
I'm up here in New England, ready to recap the Eagles' two joint practices with the Patriots. Here with me to add some balance and perspective, longtime Patriots and NFL reporter from the Boston Sports Journal, Greg Bedard. All right, there's a lot to dig into. We had 2 days of joint practices between the Eagles and the Patriots, and I don't know if you're one of these guys that has a win or loss, applied to
who won,
these practices.
Jeff? Winner or loser?
Let's start off. Who was the winner? No, I want to start with the Eagles offense because, of course, it's very much of intrigue here in Philadelphia. Well, I'm in New England, but when I'm back in Philadelphia about how's this new offense gonna work and how long is it gonna take for them to really kind of start to hum. And for the first 3 weeks of camp up in Philadelphia, it's been a little bit of a struggle. They're going up against good defense, but they finally, at least the first offense, got to go up against someone in a different uniform. And, the Patriots have a good defense. They have some really talented players. We know a few of them, having, covered Milton Williams and Christian Ellis and Kevin Byard. But I'm really interested, Greg, you've been around, you've covered the NFL for 25 years or so, and certainly know the Patriots as well as anybody. What do you, just looking at it from your vantage point, what did you make of the scheme and how it looked, first eyes on it?
Yeah. So, just on the topic of who won the practice, I saw it as I thought the Patriots won slightly on day one. I thought it was even on day two. I will tell you, talking to somebody internally with the Patriots, they viewed it basically as even the 2 days because the opinion I got that the first day was great for their offense. And the Patriots defense wasn't good. Which that day I only saw the Eagles offense in the 2-minute drill, and that's where my tweet came from. The Eagles offense is rough. Day two, I did watch the Eagles offense against the Patriots defense. That day, the Patriots, basically their consensus was the defense was great and the offense was poor. So sort of, flip-flopping there and pretty
that was
even.
kind of my view of it, Greg, too. Just to I would say too, I thought Patriots slightly better day one in terms of I was really focused mostly on the offense the first 2 days. I kind of got some defense a little bit, but if I was looking at the offense specifically, I thought the Eagles started really strong, especially on the ground on day one, and then it just kind of got a little worse. The Patriots made some adjustments, and as you mentioned, a 2-minute drill, they were not good. And then the second day was kind of almost the opposite. They struggled during the red zone. The first 2 periods of the red zone, I thought pretty much throughout that. They had a couple moments here and there. Jalen threw a couple touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions. And then in that final red zone period, they were good and they scored a touchdown. So
Yeah.
And then defensively, I did talk to someone inside. It sounded like, they thought they were pretty good, but a little disappointing in terms of the secondary and what they did in pass coverage on day one. Much more improved in day two, especially in the red zone. They have a good red zone defense, and I think they gave Drake May and company a little bit of a struggle there. To just switch back to the offense of what you saw, so much is dependent on the ground game for the Eagles, and the Shanahan McVay scheme and whatever, all the iterations of it, as well as anybody. Do you think what you saw, you have Saquon Barkley, you have good offensive linemen, that it's going to play to the skill sets of those guys up front and Saquon and Tank Bigsby?
Well, Saquon and the running backs, probably yes. I think I've seen Tank do that kind of stuff. He was in Jacksonville, right, previously?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I have seen him do those types of things. Here's my concern, Jeff, from what I saw from the past couple days. First of all, it's what the Eagles are going from and going to is a major transition. It is. And anybody who tells you otherwise is just whistling past the graveyard. Like it's for now, I will say the Eagles, I think, had the benefit of, they have a very experienced and very smart offensive line. And those guys, and I'm sure the old Eagles schemes have, had a variety of different things, incorporated some outside zone power, different things. That's what the Patriots under Josh McDaniels have always done. And so they've started to incorporate more outside zone stuff to take advantage of Drake May's athletic ability and boots and things like that. Um, what I saw from them, and I don't mean to alarm Eagles fans, okay, because I'm sure even for what I saw this weekend, it was better than what I saw. But what it reminded me, these free runners in the pass game, and I don't know whether that's on Hurts or on the center. I don't know exactly how that scheme deals with it, but the amount of free runners that we saw from that the Eagles allowed the Patriots defensive guys just to come unblocked. I mean, the first 3 plays of team on the first day in the 2-minute drill were just absurd. I mean, Kevin Byard is literally 3 feet away from Jalen Hurts, like between the center and the guard, and nobody picks him up. He just walks in. The same thing happens with Craig Woodson, the other safety, on the next play. And then on the play after that, Christian Barmore, they run a little, stunt, and he gets a sack. I'll just tell you, that reminded me of being in Las Vegas watching the Raiders Patriots joint practice when Matt Patricia was the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, because the Patriots were going from their scheme to the outside zone scheme. Now, the difference here, Jeff, of course, is Sean Mannion actually has a lot of experience, mostly playing in it, but he has a lot of experience in the system. He's very smart. The one thing I would worry about, and this was the issue with Matt Patricia, who is not a dumb guy, but of course he was a defensive coordinator. Eagles fans know him. He came and coordinated some of your defense. Matt Patricia didn't know how to install a West Coast system. Like, they were basically going off PDFs that they were printing off the copier to figure out how to install it. Now, Sean Mannion has played in the system, coached a little bit, but does he know what it takes to install it from like day one? Those are the things I have questions about, but it's definitely a work in progress.
Yeah. And we've seen that. But the issue for me, when you bring up the pressures and how they handle things up front, like, that's been an issue since Kelsey has no
Yes.
longer been at the center position, because previously it was awkward to have the center do it. But like, it was, Jalen was young, and I think he felt comfortable. Kelsey been around a long time. But typically you want your quarterback to handle all the the pre-snap calls and the set protection. Certainly the offensive linemen are involved in all that, but you want the final call to come from the quarterback. And that's what it's become. But like, we've seen since Kelsey's left, that like picking up, not only the blitz, but I think really simulated pressures have been more of the problem for them. And for Jalen. And it's not just him. It's not just him, but it's just like the way they had things set up with Stoutland, who previously had given Kelsey all this control, and then when it went to Jalen, it was just like, this transition just didn't work out. And you saw last year was a major part of the problem for this offense. And now, so you're wondering, okay, what are the built-in, schemed up kind of, answers for him when he is hot? Does this offense, does Mannion have them for him? Because I don't know, previously they always had him for Jalen, so that was kind of a scheme thing. But so it's not, again, I don't want to say it's all Jalen, but I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a history here. I'm just wondering now, like, is Mannion going to be able to get Jalen to kind of now, like, adapt to what he is asking him to do in terms of those protections? And I agree with you. There was like, it wasn't just in that one period. It happened yesterday a little bit. It was a little better. I think the Eagles kind of figured out a few things, but then they also had the O lineman had problems just kind of like containing Milton Williams, or like he got in there for a sack
Yep.
early on, and
I think first of all, if Eagles fans are a little bit nervous after this, that's fine. I will point out to them that this is if you're trying to figure crap out on the offense, your protection and all of that stuff, the Patriots are a good team to go against because they blitz a lot, way more than I would like. Like they all out blitzed in the last preseason game. Starters didn't even play like 7 times. And they are the king of simulated pressures. So if that was obviously a struggle of the Eagles. So you could see the good thing is the Eagles took the film from the first day and it got a lot better. I remember watching that first day 2-minute drill and I'm like, are they going to motion a back into the backfield and block somebody? Because they were, and that's the other thing that I worry about with this scheme. There's a reason why Kyle Shanahan goes through quarterbacks fast and they get hurt. Like they put a lot on the quarterback, leave him hung out to dry. They take some unbelievable shots. This goes for Minnesota as well, where Mannion came from somewhat. But I did want to point out. So I looked up. I remember I mentioned to you one thing. I was having a conversation with an NFL offensive coordinator, and this is after Kelsey had retired, and they were blown away. They had read something where Hurts basically said, the center can't handle all the problems. Basically, that Jalen Hurts had not been taught how to handle pressure, and because everything was on Kelsey, they just kept it off Hurts' plate. And I think there's been times from what in recent years where he's been resistant to that. And you could see this on film where you're watching the Eagles. I remember this from last year. And, I forget the guy on YouTube. He has a site. I'm a subscriber to it. So he breaks
QB School.
Yes. Yeah. I'm a subscriber to it. And you see all these different guys pointing to things like that can't go on. That obviously that was part of the problem last year. I'm sure that's being solved this year, but how the Eagles identify blitzes and how they pick things up to me is going to be fascinating to watch over the year.
Well, I'll tell you why that was like that, because Landon Dickerson, who's a really smart guy and has like a center background, was like kind of maybe more responsible for helping out with calling out pass protections more than Cam Jurgens, who was again still young.
Right.
So like
Yeah.
it's like, and so they really didn't have like a defined kind of leader when it came to that. And so Landon was just as involved as Cam and Jalen. So it just became kind of confusing. I think it became confusing for Saquon Barkley and the backs about who they needed to pick up, because Barkley was just like, I don't know how many times I saw him not recognize where the blitz was coming from. I don't want to focus too much on the pressure stuff because I do want to talk a little bit about just the rest of the offense, because again, like I think if you're looking at the scheme, the reason why they want to bring it in, I think more than anything, is just like, okay, things just got too predictable for the offense when it came to other defenses picking up what they want to do in the run game, because it was like shotgun all the time, zone read, RPO stuff.
Yep.
And it's just, there's only so many options there. And defenses just kind of picked up on that. And it was just like, and Jalen's like, whether he wanted to run or not run, just wasn't as effective with his legs. And that just kind of took that whole kind of +1 factor out of it. So this way you have kind of like, okay, if Jalen, you don't want to run as much, if we don't want to get Jalen hurt, this is a run-based offense. We've seen Shanahan do it. With Christian McCaffrey, or who named the running back, but we have Saquon Barkley. We could certainly run this offense, this outside zone stuff. I mean, he's agile enough to hit it, with their stretching defenses and hit those holes that they create. And then you have Tank Bigsby, who I think has a lot of potential to run north and south. And Will Shipley actually had a good first day in the joint practices. So if they can like get it going on the ground, then that'll set up some of these layup throws for Jalen in the passing offense. But what I was told, I bumped into somebody, I was told by someone just recently up here that like if you talk to some other offensive minds around the league, they're a little surprised that they went this way with Jalen at quarterback, because what's going to happen is that, with so much under center and his back to the defense and the reads maybe being a click, Like there's a little bit of, instead of being able to stand there and look at the defense and decide where he wants to go, all of a sudden he's under center. He's doing he's like turning his back to defense. It's
Yep.
going to add a little bit of a click to what he has to make these. And they're going to be more full field reads, basically progression reads. And what they did a lot for him was they cut the field in half. And it was just basically two reads, you know what I'm saying? And then what
Yep.
happens with Jalen a lot of times is that when that's not there, then forget it. He cannot perform out of structure, and it's either he's just basically scrambling or running to the sideline, trying to make a play. Typically, he doesn't, and just throws the ball away. Like, I don't think there's a quarterback. If you look at the numbers the two previous years, there isn't a quarterback that drops and throws the ball the fewest amount, because he's either taking a sack, he's scrambling, or he's throwing the ball away. And I feel like this offense, they feel like the way they'll offset it is they'll have more setup off the run through play action, and they'll have layup throws. But what happens when they got third and long? What happens when they're trailing in games? Like, I don't know. What do you like? You've seen Josh has done so many different offenses over and you know Jimmy Garoppolo as well as anybody. He played the Shanahan offense and did well to a certain point, but he's limited as a quarterback. I'm just like, Jalen's a
Yeah.
good quarterback, but he's certainly limited to an extent. Do you think like
Yeah.
Hurts is going to thrive in this offense?
Yeah. Well, I'm not the biggest Hurts fan in the world. I will say I was stunned at how he played in his 2 Super Bowls. I thought he was spectacular. I remember there was a game here, a season opener. I'm sure you remember when that was. It was like 3 or 4 years ago. But
Yeah.
I thought Hurts was terrible in that game. I remember texting somebody who was also watching the film. I was like, "Am I right to say Jalen Hurts was awful in this game?" He's like, "Yeah, he was horrible." And so I'm not the biggest Hurts guy in terms of throwing from the pocket. I will say that I do think that the team is going to run through Saquon and the running attack, and also getting the backs involved in the pass game. I think that's going to be their bread and butter, and it's going to be running and defense is how the Eagles are going to have to win this year. Especially, well, I mean, we'll see how. There no Devontae Smith, no Mekhi Lemon, no Elijah Moore on the last day. I mean, they had nothing. I mean, Dontavian Wicks was pretty good, but in terms of Hurts in this scheme, I think it's going to help him. Like, once it really gets going and gets cooking, I think the easy boot action throws, the backside, he's going to have to get used to it. It's going to be an adjustment, but a lot of it. There's no better offense for dialing up easy throws than Kyle Shanahan and this West Coast system. And, all these guys, McVay, Kevin O'Connell, like, they all come from Kyle Shanahan. All of them, even McVay, even though he was, the first one to have big success. But I think it should be, I think it's fine for him. I don't worry about that. I mean, he just has to improve as a third and long passer in the pocket and throwing downfield and throwing with anticipation and throwing guys open. That's just part of being a high-level quarterback in this league. He's a good quarterback. Does he want to be an elite quarterback? Then he's going to have to throw guys open with anticipation. And I don't see that enough from him at this point, but he's still, a young guy.
I agree with you, and like I've said this since they brought this offense in. I think if I'm Jalen Hurts, like I want to learn and become better as a passer from the pocket. I mean, he's actually, again, I don't think anyone throws. There's not many guys that throw a better deep ball. The problem is he just doesn't have. Besides Devontae, I mean, Devontae's a great receiver, all around great receiver, and you're very wise to point out that the fact that he wasn't out there, and we don't know about Mekhi Lemon yet or what he's going to be, but like that's a huge loss, and that factors into why at times I think they were struggling in terms of throwing the ball downfield, and that's been the way throughout all of camp. But like, if you don't have like AJ to kind of just like throw those 50-50 balls up anymore, and Devontae's getting clouded, and Devontae to me is great receiver, he's not AJ Brown, then you okay, you have a drastic fall off. I mean, I thought Dontavian Wicks has been nice. I think he's a good receiver. He's not AJ Brown, he's not Devontae Smith as a number 2. There's going to be a drastic fall off here. And I think that's a great transition to really kind of get into what AJ Brown did these past 2 days, what he's doing in New England, and what the Eagles, quite frankly, are going to do without him. I want to get your take first off on like, how's AJ been in like New England? Like, I don't know how much you've dealt with him, but like, how do you think
Yeah.
he's going to fit in there? Um, and and what were your impressions ultimately? I mean, you and I talked many times over this past offseason about what was eventually going to happen in terms of the trade. But like just from what I saw, like AJ looked like the AJ of like 2, 3 years ago out there,
Mhm.
not like the guy I saw last year.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I haven't had many interactions with him. I don't know about you guys down there, but we're not allowed in the locker room yet, and that won't start until like the regular season. So that's when you could sort of chat up guys a little bit more. The interactions with the media, he has seemed a little bit uneasy. Um, because he's new. I mean, that's totally natural. I think he's fit in quickly with the team. I didn't have any qualms about that. I knew that was going to happen. And being around Mike Vrabel and some of the guys he was around in Tennessee, that's going to help. Um, he's been, as far as him physically, I would agree with what Quinyon Mitchell said the other day, where he's like, he looks faster, he looks better. Um, a little quicker, a little better, whatever he said, um, compared to what I saw on film from last year. And some of that was the scheme we knew and his unhappiness and blah blah blah. But I figured we would see it's change is good. I've covered the Dolphins, the Packers, and the Patriots, and change and work for Sports Illustrated. Every time I change jobs, Jeff doesn't change, but he's still the GOAT and made good decisions doing that. He's like an OG newspaper guy.
No one else wants me. I'm just stuck,
But
or they're stuck with me.
yeah, but change is good. And he's got a chip on his shoulder, especially I'm sure he had another gear for the Eagles coming and you guys in the media and y'all trying to stir up trouble and all that stuff. And you knew you were going to get an extra gear. I think we're going to get that for a large portion of this year. It just depends on, how long it goes for. I mean, as far as him on the field, it's been good. I mean, I still have my doubts about how quote unquote dominant he can be. I mean, pretty much what we've seen him do a lot is, slants, hitches, and back shoulders with a couple of they dial up a couple of, I can think of two this year in practice. So that's I think and this was my evaluation of him around the time of the trade. I think that he needs help getting open deep. Like a lot of the highlights you see are double moves that are built into the play action, 7-step drops and, all that stuff. That I think that still holds true, but I think he's going to be more effective after the catch than maybe he's been in recent years.
Yeah, which is like, I mean, he was phenomenal the first 3 years after the catch with the Eagles. Not so much last year. Some of that was scheme related. Some of that was quarterback related. But the guy I saw out there was, I mean, like the thing, AJ made a great contested catch over the middle yesterday. I don't think there's anybody that has stronger hands than him. At the catch point. He's always been great with like late hands. Like there's just so much that he does that I think last year Philly fans lost sight of. And you're right. I think this is just going to be a rejuvenated AJ. And I'm sure, Vrabel is thinking, if you look at the contract, I just need 2 great years out of him. And,
Right.
and my guess is probably that's what they're going to get. It's just what they needed. And it wasn't just him that they went out and got. Romeo Dobbs, I think, had a really good first day
Yep.
against Tariq Woolen, which I think shocked a lot of people because Woolen had come into camp and really performed well. But he was going up against like Darius Cooper and Hollywood Brown. It's like,
Right.
it changed. I think he was like a little surprised. Obviously AJ Brown is a tough assignment, and Romeo Dobbs, I think, probably a little bit better. I don't know, Dontavian Wicks and they both played in Green Bay together. I don't know who's the
Right.
better wide receiver, but
Yeah, Dobbs has been
like
on fire over the last like 10 days or something. Like he started off really slow. You wouldn't see much from him. This is a guy going to a new offense, coming from the West Coast, going to a new offense. But just in the last like week, 10 days, he's been completely on fire. And that was a continuation against the Eagles.
yeah, but when Mac Hollins is like beating you and Eureka One, now I think
Mac
with the
Hollins
one,
is good. Leave Mac
I know
Hollins
I
alone.
like Mac, but Mac's good. Mac is good. He's a good like third receiver, but like I think with Woolen, he's a man press guy, and like they're asking him to do different things in Vic's scheme, and there's a lot of match zone stuff, and like you got to be pretty smart to do that, or at least. And I whatever. He seemed like he was swimming. I don't know. What did you make of the Eagles' pass defense? Is that the best that the Patriots' pass offenses looked this summer? Because I was really impressed by what I saw in that first
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Everybody loves hyperbole in our business, so everybody's trying to state like this was the best day Drake May's had all camp. I don't know. I mean, he's had good days. I was surprised. I mean, I do think a lot of it was scheme. I mean, I don't know. Again, I did watch Drake May the first day. I mean, I wasn't blown away I didn't think there were a lot of tight window throws. I thought there were a lot of open guys that he was just hitting. And to
Yeah.
me, that's Josh McDaniels. Now, I don't know if it changed the second day. I remember a pass. I mean, there weren't many times where I was like starring stuff. I mean, obviously the throw to AJ Brown on like 3rd and 2, there was like an all-out blitz, and May just threw it over the top. Quinyon Mitchell. I mean, that's like perfect, and nothing you can do about it. So yeah, I'm not one to go over the top about the Patriots and all that stuff, but I thought they were really good, and they're formidable. And internally, they thought the offense was great the first day. It wasn't. I like how the Eagles adjusted and basically saw stuff on film and came back. And the interception that May threw on the first play of that red zone sort of 45-second on the clock situation. That's Reek Woolen reacting to, well, how many times are they going to throw a 5-yard slant to AJ Brown on first down before I do something? I mean, that's what they've been doing all camp. So, I thought it was good competitive work. The Patriots are good. They are. And it seems like they're getting some of their offensive line stuff figured out. I was impressed with especially what Jared Wilson did against Jordan Davis in these practices. But so the Patriots are no slouch if the Eagles had some issues.
No, this wasn't like 2 years ago when the Eagles
No,
came
not even
in and their
close.
their defense. Well, I thought it was the offense versus the Pats defense was pretty close that day. It was only one during practice, but the Eagles defense just completely overwhelmed that offensive line. I mean, there were plays that couldn't even be run because the Eagles were just like clobbering up front. And, we know how the Patriots offensive line came under fire after the Super Bowl, certainly Will Campbell, but, and that's a good way to transition into, you're an, I think when it comes to like line play, I don't think there's a better sports writer to analyze it,
Thanks.
than you, Greg. And so you watched a lot of the one-on-ones between the Eagles defensive line and the Patriots O-line, I'm sure because you're really fascinated. I mean, that's their chances of going back to the Super Bowl hinge on that offensive line and the changes they've made there. Maybe like I think what you could bring context to is like how the Eagles guys did up front versus, whether it was a legit guy that they were beating or whether it was just someone, who knows, I mean, Caleb Lomo, we know a little bit about because the Eagles, I think, were really interested in him, maybe not in the first round, but the second round. Who's some of the guys that stood out for you from the Eagles and maybe some of the guys that didn't, based upon who they were going up against?
The guy that I thought was the MVP of the Eagles in these practices, from what I saw, Jalix Hunt, I thought was outstanding in these practices. Tough to block. It was a really good challenge for Will Campbell, who has been vastly improved in this camp. He's healthier. He's stronger. His technique is a lot better. Last year he used to just catch pass rushers. This year he can, and he wasn't strong enough to hold up against the bull rush, especially when he was dealing with a knee injury in the playoffs. But now he's healthy. He's strong enough now to be able to catch some guys, but he changes his pitches. He'll come out, forceful punch, ride guys around the edge. I thought that was a great battle the whole time. About even, I would give Campbell a little bit of an advantage. Left guard for the Patriots. So this is where the Eagles did a lot of work. It's Elijah Vera Tucker, who was a former first-round pick of the Jets. pretty much the consensus on him is if he can ever stay on the field, which he never does, like he missed all of last season with the Jets, I think with a torn triceps. He's like an all-pro level talent. He hasn't been that to this point in this camp. He got his butt whooped by the Eagles in those joint practices.
More
I'm trying
Ojomo,
to.
I think Ojomo was the
Yeah,
one who fixed him
Ojomo.
first.
So Ojomo rushed against Elijah Vera Tucker the first day. He went against Michael Winu the second day. Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis both lost their reps to Jared Wilson, second-year player who just moved from guard to center. It's his more natural position. And also Michael Winu. Michael Winu is a good player. And by the way, he's going to be a free agent after this year. So as long as you don't want don't need overly athletic guards, he's going to be available after the season. And he's good. He's kind of big, and he rounds himself into quote-unquote shape. But he was really good. Jared Wilson stunned me how he was. I think I had him 3-0-1 against Jordan Davis, who, look, I know Jordan Davis isn't Milton Williams or anything, but the dude is big and strong. And so I have a lot of questions about whether Jared Wilson can hold up at center. That sort of answered that. And then on the right side, Morgan Moses, I think he doesn't take many reps, the veteran, but when he's out there, he's really good and solid. The other guys, Caleb Lomu or Marcus Bryant, those guys can really struggle. So if you saw Eagles guys beating them, I wouldn't go, celebrate a Super Bowl yet or anything like that.
Well, Jordan Davis, like the still quite, obviously, I don't know if you know, Mike, last year he was in shape, actually a little in shape the year before towards the end there, but last year got in shape and was just like completely dominant up front in the run game. Pass rush is still kind of like a work in progress with him because it's just tough for him to get low. And conditioning, even as good a condition that he had been in last year, it's still, I mean, he's still 350 pounds, it's tough to kind of get low when you're huffing and puffing out there. And I think it's just like, what else does he have besides the bull rush? There really isn't much in terms of moves. So I think in these one-on-one situations, he doesn't really kind of shine. So that may explain a little bit.
Yeah.
Bring a little context to what those rushes. I don't think Jalen Carter typically gives a lot of effort in one-on-ones.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't there the second day. I'm not worried about him. He's looked good this year. When you look at the edge, I thought Nolan Smith, at least based upon what you had told me and one of my colleagues told me, did pretty good in his matchups against Morgan Moses. And he's another one, like, it's just like consistency has been an issue, especially at the point of attack when he's trying to win one-on-ones. And, with no Jonathan Grenard, in possibly not at the start of the season because he's got this pectoral injury, it's like, okay, they're concerned about whether they're going to have a number one. And, and I think we've seen it from Jay Alexander. I still am a little worried about him in terms of like winning consistently enough. He can do a lot of things, and Nolan's the same way in terms of like setting the edge against the run, playing with violence, dropping into coverage and making plays. That interception that Jay Alex had made. I mean, he's phenomenal physical skills to go get that ball. As a former safety, and not that long ago, so that kind of explains that for you as well. But I thought the defense, when I was kind of keying in on them at times yesterday, and I know you didn't watch maybe them as much until the end, but they kind of the secondary bounced back. And like that's a strength, right? When you have Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, although I think Cooper at times going up against was it Demario Douglas can be a struggle, a small guy like that. But they kind of look much better in the red zone. But like, just real quick, you've been covering this a long time, the NFL and these joint practices and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to, unfortunately, like the league's changed so much. And it's like, the preseason doesn't matter anymore for the most part, at least when it comes to the first units. And these joint practices now mean everything in the world to these teams. And it's just like, so we're there and we're watching and we don't have replays. We don't have, film to watch. And this is another reason why they do it, because they don't want to put stuff on film for teams to, to study before the starts of the season. So it's just like, too much is being made of these 2 days, right? Quite frankly, by the media. Put into perspective, like, you talk to coaches within the Patriots, like, is it important? How much are they doing, scheming things up? How much are they working on? Like it could have been something like he wanted to work. Vrabel wanted to work, or Josh wanted to work on this certain play, and just so happened it was a bad call against whatever it was that Vic Fangio was working on. It's just
Mhm.
like it's tough to put a lot of stock, I think, in these 2 days.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I mean, I do think that they're important, and it's tough for fans because I don't know. Did Sirianni say anything about if the starters are going to play on Saturday or not?
There's no way there. He hasn't saying, he never says anything, but there's no way,
Yeah, well, of course,
especially not
I'm
for these
talking
2 days.
about the Eagles. The Eagles, who are one of the most ridiculous teams about injuries and like avoiding injuries and things like that. So
But,
I
in
mean,
their just real quick, in their defense, like, they've been one of the most healthiest teams over the last since they've started doing this. I mean, but they don't
yeah,
practice much. They don't push them that much. And they like, I think Devontae Smith, for the most part, has been put in bubble wrap.
yeah, no, I agree, and I think that I think that these things have a lot of value. I don't know whether the Patriots are going to trot their starters out there. I Most times I would say no, but this is the second and last preseason game at home, and that's a rough look. If you don't trot Drake May out there for like just three, a couple handoffs or something like that, I could see something that's rough. People are not going to like that around here that they didn't get to see Drake May at all. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of veterans will sit, but just let them hand off 3 times and that's it. Punt and that's it. So we'll see. I think there's a lot of value in it. I remember the Patriots went to the Packers. I mean, it's the Packers. You're out in the middle of Wisconsin. They had 2 days, and the first day was good. The second day, there were fights. I think they ended up like calling it early because it was just, it's hard to have it 2 days. But the good thing for the Eagles is I thought their ability to take the film and make adjustments from the first day and come back the next day and have a much more successful day. To me, if I was one of the Eagles coaches, that made me feel good about what we're doing in the direction we're going. So I do think it's a big benefit, certainly more than the preseason game, because in those they're just going to run base nothing burgers because they don't want to put anything on film.
Yeah, and that's what happened to the Eagles in the first preseason game with their backups. Like, they just ran base crap and they looked terrible. I mean, it would look wretched, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, Sean Mannion's offense is a mess," and blah blah blah. And I mean, like, of course, we had to bring the context to be like, "Okay, look at these are very base plays that they're going to run in this offense." I mean, like, and they weren't doing anything to dress them up. They weren't even trying to kind of like disguise this, that, or the other thing. So that's why so much was like hinging on these 2 days and with the starters. And I think it was promising ultimately for them to come out the offense. I think could run the ball the way they did in the first day. And while the second day wasn't, I thought as productive for them, certainly on the ground, and they had some struggles in the red zone there. That last period, I think when they probably schemed something up, it did show that Jalen Hurts and the offense can move against a good defense and score on them, and that's what happened. He threw a touchdown pass to Hollywood Brown, didn't convert on the 2-point conversion, but like I thought Jalen looked good there in the pocket, and it'll be interesting. These are
Mm-hmm.
two teams that I think had been in the two previous Super Bowls. Um, you know, who knows? I mean, like, really, this will definitely be one of the better teams in the AFC, and I think the Eagles will be one of the better teams in the NFC. Who knows? Maybe they're facing each other in several months here down the road.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. I mean, I have higher expectations that the Patriots are going to be there than the Eagles, but
I
uh,
agree.
I've certainly been wrong before. I mean, I'm just interested in this whole, back and forth this season with like Eagles fans and media having and players and coaches having one eye on what AJ Brown's doing with the Patriots, and I'm sure they're all going to be watching opening night at Seattle, see what he can do. If he goes out there and catches like 180 yards and like 3 touchdowns against Devin Witherspoon, I mean, there's going to be that. There's just going to be a back and forth. How's Jalen Hurts doing, without AJ Brown, and how he's an idiot, and the two fan bases going back and forth on Twitter about their guys. It's going to be, I think it's going to be awesome to watch. And I for the story, yeah, I'm hoping the Eagles improve over the course of the season in a new offense, and see you in wherever the hell the Super Bowl is
Yeah.
this year. I'm not even sure.
Real quick, give you just a quick funny story before we part. I'm walking up to the field for the first day of the practices, and Howie and Elliot Wolf are talking for a while, and they're just not too far away from me. And Howie, after I kind of look over, he caught my eye, and he's like, "All right, all right, Elliot, I'll let you announce the trade." That like he's joking that they kind of swung some deal, and of course,
Mhm.
the wise ass that I am, I said, "Oh, what you trade back for AJ Brown?" And Howie did Howie didn't laugh. And then of course AJ went out there and put on a show, and like you said, I know Eagles fans aren't going to want to hear it. Certainly the Eagles aren't going to want to hear it. But if the pass offense struggles, if Devontae Smith struggles with seeing a lot more cloud and double teams, and there isn't a good second option, and the rookie Mekhi Lemon and the second round pick at tight end Eli Sowers don't play, and they really struggle through the air. You're not going to hear the end of it about them letting AJ Brown go, especially if he has a big season in New England. That being said, as you said, it's going to be a work in progress for Philadelphia. I think people have to be patient about that, and I think at some point they're eventually going to get the offense to start humming. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Greg, thanks so
Mhm.
much for joining us. I really appreciate your time and your knowledge on the game of football and everything about the Patriots. Time for another mailbag. Remember, if you have a question, reach out to me on social media at Jeff_McLane, and I'll try and answer your question on the podcast. First up this week from X, at Philly ETC, wants to know about Jalen Hunt. What does the future look like for Hunt given his improvement? And what could it mean for someone like Nolan Smith? Philly ETC, you're right. Jalen Hunt has had a very good training camp. I think everybody who has watched him over these last 3 weeks can say that he has improved upon not only his second season, but certainly his first season. And what you've seen is this career arc of him kind of trending upward. And with Jonathan Grenard, the Eagles' big acquisition this offseason at edge, injured, and his availability for the regular season uncertain, according to Vic Fangio, Jalen Hunt may have to be the number one edge rusher when the season starts. And I think the Eagles do feel comfortable having him in that role. Um, is he still developing? Yes, especially as an edge rusher. But I think what we've seen out of Judge Hunt is that he really can do it all. He can set the edge. He can drop in the coverage. In fact, he had just an amazing play at the end of the second joint practices with the Patriots when he dove for an interception. So this is a guy, he's still kind of very new to this position, started at safety in college and has kind of worked his way up. But you raise a good point about what Hunt's improvement could mean for someone like Nolan Smith. Now, Hunt was drafted in the third round. Nolan Smith was drafted in the first. And there's just this past offseason, the Eagles picked up Nolan Smith's fifth-year option based on his first-round rookie contract. Nolan Smith's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a chance the Eagles could extend him and have him here long-term. But if it's going to come down to one or the other, I got to think that Jalen Hunt has more of a chance to be here than Nolan Smith because, again, they're probably not going to have to give him as big of a contract because of his third-round, value and when he was drafted versus Nolan Smith, who's, I think, going to make, a fair amount of money. I think based upon what I understand, it's like 14 or 15 million, somewhere in that range for his fifth season. Nolan's also had the shoulder injuries, and he's still wearing a huge brace on his left arm. And I just don't think he projects as well as an edge rusher versus Jalen. He kind of struggles to win at the point of attack. Now, he's one of these guys who can do a lot as well. You never worry about effort with Nolan. He can set the edge. He's very violent at the point of attack when he is setting the edge. He can drop in the coverage. He's a smart player. But certainly, I think at some point, this could come to a breaking point in terms of who the Eagles will extend long term. Our next question is also from X. This question is about where backup offensive lineman Willie Lampkin fits into the Eagles' plans. It seems like everybody wants to talk about Willie Lampkin during this training camp. In fact, I spoke to Lane Johnson about him off the other field, and unprompted, Lane brought him up and talked about how this guy is legit. He is an NFL player. He belongs on the Eagles 53-man roster, and there's a chance at some point he could be a starter, certainly a guy that contributes off the bench. And I think that may happen this season. He may be the top center, backup center, top guard for the Eagles. Certainly Drew Kendall is in that conversation. I think there's still a lot of questions that have to be answered in terms of like whether Willie can go up against some of the bigger nose tackles in the NFL. for those who don't know much about Willie, he's like listed at 5'11", and quite frankly, I've stood next to him. It's probably more like 5'9", 5'10". He weighs around 290 pounds, but technically, in terms of his physical attributes, how he has this low center of gravity and he's got these strong hips, great footwork, and how he knows how to use his leverage, he can really offset what he lacks in size against these bigger guys. In fact, Jordan Davis, I asked him about Willie Lampkin yesterday as well. And Jordan, as you know, is 6'6", and for big guys like him, it's really hard for them to get low against someone like Willie Lampkin. So, in some ways, being that small can be an advantage for an interior lineman like Willie Lampkin. And the Eagles keep throwing more and more on his plate each time he goes out there. This was someone that the Eagles, picked up just before the start of last season because he was injured and had been released by the team that had signed him undrafted coming out of North Carolina. So he did not play with the Eagles all last season. He was an injured reserve, but they were projecting for the future. And I think, quite frankly, that Lampkin does have a future here in Philadelphia. I'm not sure exactly what it will be, but I think he will definitely be on the 53-man roster. And at the very least, will be a backup on this team, at least until they have him, for the foreseeable future. All right, if you have a question about the Eagles, please hit me up on social media at Jeff_McLane, and we'll try to answer it on a future episode of Uncovering the Birds.